What happens when two strangers fake a romance to survive a wedding and end up finding something real? Join Madison and Jaden in The Great Pretender as they navigate through comedic mishaps and unexpected feelings. Madison Coleman stood in front of her hotel room mirror, nervously smoothing out the hem of her dress. She was about to attend her friend Alyssa's wedding, an event she had been dreading for weeks. It wasn't just the prospect of small talk with distant acquaintances, it was knowing her ex-boyfriend, Marcus, would be there, undoubtedly with his new girlfriend in tow. Madison was tall and graceful, with natural curls framing a face that could transition from warmth to wit in a heartbeat. Jaden Mitchell, on the other hand, had his own set of anxieties. A tech consultant who found more comfort in coding than in social situations, Jaden was used to blending into the background. Jaden's sharp suit made him stand out, but he would have preferred to be invisible for the day. He wasn't prepared to face his ex-girlfriend, Bianca, who would surely flaunt her new engagement. Fate had its own plans as Madison and Jaden bumped into each other in the hotel lobby. Both were early, both were alone, and both were radiating awkwardness. Jaden, noticing Madison's apprehension, struck up a conversation, leading to an immediate connection. They quickly realized they had mutual friends in Alyssa and a shared predicament, exes they wanted to avoid. In a moment of impulsive brilliance, Madison proposed they pretend to be a couple for the weekend. Jaden, seeing the potential for avoiding Bianca's smug looks, readily agreed. They sealed their pact with a handshake and a laugh, unaware of how this charade would unfold. The wedding venue was a beautiful countryside estate, with manicured gardens and twinkling fairy lights. As Madison and Jaden walked in hand, they were greeted by a mix of surprised and curious glances. Alyssa, the bride, spotted them and rushed over, her eyes widening in delight. Alyssa's joy at seeing them together was contagious, and soon whispers spread through the crowd. Playing the part of a couple wasn't hard for Madison and Jaden. They found themselves enjoying each other's company, sharing inside jokes, and naturally falling into a rhythm. Jaden's easy charm complemented Madison's quick wit, and they navigated the evening's events with surprising ease. Every stolen glance and subtle touch felt more natural, even as they reminded themselves it was all for show. Their first mishap occurred during the cocktail hour when Madison tripped on her dress, spilling her drink all over Jaden's shoes. They laughed it off, with Jaden pretending to faint from the horror of stained leather, and Madison dramatically offering to clean them with a cocktail napkin. Their chemistry was undeniable, and their playful banter drew the attention of other guests. The dinner was another adventure. Seated at a table with Marcus and Bianca, Madison and Jaden's fake relationship was put to the test. Marcus, ever the skeptic, peppered them with questions about how they met. Jaden, quick on his feet, concocted an elaborate story about a shared love for obscure indie bands, while Madison nodded along, trying not to choke on her water. The tale grew more outrageous with every retelling, and soon they had the whole table in stitches. As the evening wore on, they began to realize how much they enjoyed each other's company. Jaden admired Madison's intelligence and grace, while Madison found herself drawn to Jaden's humor and warmth. They danced together, their movements synchronized and their laughter filling the air. For the first time in a long while, both felt truly at ease, their mutual support transforming an awkward event into a memorable one. Another mishap came during the bouquet toss. Alyssa, with a glint in her eye, aimed straight for Madison, who fumbled and sent the flowers flying towards Jaden. With a reflexive catch, Jaden found himself the reluctant holder of the bridal bouquet, much to everyone's amusement. Madison, unable to contain her laughter, dubbed him the next bride, and Jaden took a mock bow, playing along with the joke. By the end of the night, their pretend relationship felt less like an act and more like the beginning of something real. As they walked back to their rooms, they couldn't help but reflect on the day's events and the unexpected connection that had formed between them. The morning after the wedding, Madison and Jaden found themselves in a peculiar position. They had agreed to maintain their ruse until the end of the weekend, but the line between pretense and reality had begun to blur. They spent the day exploring the countryside estate, sharing stories about their lives, and continuing to weave the fabric of their faux relationship. Madison, with her keen eye for aesthetics as a fashion designer, admired the estate's charming decor and picturesque views. Jaden, the tech consultant, amused himself by speculating about the estate's Wi-Fi infrastructure and the probable locations of hidden security cameras. They teased each other relentlessly, their banter becoming more natural and playful with each passing hour. As they strolled through the gardens, they encountered a series of wedding-themed activities. The first was a photo booth, complete with silly props and outrageous costumes. Jaden donned a pirate hat, while Madison chose a feather boa and oversized sunglasses. They posed for a series of ridiculous photos, their laughter echoing through the garden. The resulting pictures were a reflection to their burgeoning friendship and the ease with which they could be themselves around each other. Next, they joined a game of lawn croquet, a sport neither had any experience with. Their lack of skill quickly became apparent, leading to a series of comedic blunders. Jaden, attempting a dramatic shot, managed to send his ball careening into a nearby fountain. Madison, in turn, spent more time tripping over the mallet than actually hitting the ball. Their antics drew the attention of other guests, who couldn't help but laugh at their ineptitude. Despite their lack of talent, Madison and Jaden found themselves having an unexpectedly good time. As the day progressed, the facade of their pretend relationship continued to strengthen. They held hands, exchanged knowing glances, and shared whispered jokes. Yet, beneath the surface, both began to grapple with growing feelings that complicated their arrangement. The evening brought another challenge, a dance-off. Encouraged by the wedding guests, Madison and Jaden found themselves center stage, tasked with outdancing their fellow attendees. They took to the challenge with gusto, their competitive spirits igniting. Jaden, surprisingly nimble for a self-proclaimed nerd, showcased an array of unexpected dance moves, much to Madison's delight. Madison, ever the graceful fashionista, matched his enthusiasm with her own impressive footwork. Their performance was a hit, earning applause and cheers from the crowd. Yet, as they twirled and spun, Madison couldn't ignore the fluttering in her chest whenever Jaden's hand touched hers. Similarly, Jaden found his thoughts drifting towards Madison's radiant smile and the warmth of her touch. As the night wound down, the tension between them began to surface. They found themselves sitting on a secluded bench, the distant sounds of laughter and music providing a gentle backdrop. Madison, her heart racing, decided to address the elephant in the room. "Jaden," she began hesitantly, "this weekend has been amazing, but we need to talk about what happens next." Jaden, sensing the shift in her tone, nodded. "I agree, Madison. It's been fun pretending, but I think we need to be honest about our feelings." Madison bit her lip, her nerves getting the better of her. I think I'm starting to have real feelings for you, Jaden, and I don't know if that's a good thing." Jaden's heart sank. He had hoped she felt the same way, but her hesitation made him doubt. "I feel the same way, Madison, but maybe this is just the magic of the weekend talking. Maybe we shouldn't rush into anything." Their conversation took a turn for the worse as misunderstandings piled up. Madison felt vulnerable and exposed, unsure if Jaden truly reciprocated her feelings or if he was simply caught up in the moment. Jaden, on the other hand, worried that Madison's confession was a polite way of letting him down gently. Their once playful banter turned into a series of awkward silences and hesitant remarks. Both feared ruining what they had, yet neither wanted to risk their growing connection. As the night grew colder, the warmth that had defined their day together began to dissipate. In the end, they parted ways with heavy hearts, retreating to their separate rooms. The tension between them had reached a tipping point, leaving both uncertain about the future. As they lay in their beds, they couldn't help but wonder if their pretend relationship had any chance of becoming something real. The morning dawned with an air of awkwardness that clung to Madison and Jaden like morning dew. The previous night's tension had left them both restless and uneasy. The final day of wedding festivities promised more interaction with guests who were becoming increasingly suspicious of their relationship. Over breakfast, they could feel the scrutinizing gazes of other wedding attendees. Aunt Doris, an infamous gossip, was whispering to Uncle George, her eyes darting between Madison and Jaden. Alyssa, who never missed an opportunity to stir the pot, sidled up to them with a knowing smirk. Guests were beginning to notice inconsistencies in their story. The scrutiny was palpable. As Madison and Jaden navigated the day, their discomfort grew. They were frequently subjected to probing questions and skeptical looks, each encounter intensifying the tension between them. As they attended various activities, they found themselves constantly in each other's presence, maintaining their act with increasing difficulty. During a game of charades, their silent communication became almost telepathic. Every glance and touch seemed to carry an undercurrent of their unresolved feelings. Throughout the day, the pressure mounted. Guests continued to pry, their skepticism growing more blatant. The final event of the weekend was a grand farewell dinner, and Madison and Jaden knew they had to address their situation. Seated at the head table, they were surrounded by prying eyes and probing questions. Aunt Doris leaned in, her curiosity barely contained. The tension between Madison and Jaden was at its peak. The need to reveal the truth and the fear of the consequences created a palpable strain. Jaden, feeling the weight of the situation, stood up suddenly, drawing the attention of the entire room. He knew they couldn't continue the charade any longer. The room fell silent, all eyes on him. Jaden began to speak, addressing the crowd. He revealed the truth about their pretense, explaining how they had started pretending to avoid awkward situations. The guests gasped and murmured amongst themselves. Madison felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment, but she also felt a strange sense of relief. As Jaden continued, he spoke of how the weekend had changed him. What had started as a ruse had transformed into something real for him. His words were heartfelt and sincere, cutting through the tension in the room. Madison stood up, meeting Jaden halfway. Her mind raced, but her heart knew the answer. She felt a lump in her throat as she acknowledged her own feelings. The room remained silent, waiting for her response. Madison finally spoke, her voice trembling but resolute. She confessed that she felt the same way, that the weekend had shown her something real too. The crowd erupted into applause and cheers, but Madison and Jaden were lost in their own world. They moved closer, their hands meeting, and in a moment that felt both surreal and deeply authentic, they shared a kiss. It was a kiss that spoke of newfound love, of possibilities, and of a future they both wanted to explore. The guests whooped and hollered. Aunt Doris dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief, and Alyssa looked genuinely surprised. Madison and Jaden pulled apart, grinning at each other with a mixture of relief and joy. As the night continued, they danced together under the twinkling lights, sharing laughter and whispered promises. The tension of the past days melted away, replaced by a sense of excitement for what lay ahead. Their journey had been filled with mishaps and misunderstandings, but it had led them to a moment of pure, unfiltered connection. In the end, their weekend of pretense had transformed into the beginning of something real, and as they danced, they knew they were no longer pretending. Thank you so much for listening to this short, romantic audible. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe to Love Stories Unplugged.